Let's talk.
Charles Brown.
Now, it's time to talk about the elephant in the room, otherwise known as how to stop making ourselves and other animals sick. Humans, animals, and disease. They're all interrelated. So why do we keep ignoring the elephant in the room? It is the subject of a new book by Liz Kalaugher, and I'm delighted to say that Liz joins me live now. Liz, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to have you with us. For those who don't know your work, what is your, this sounds a bit like Mastermind, but what is your specialist subject, as it were?
So I'm a science writer, and my specialist subject at the moment is wildlife conservation and diseases. The good thing about being a science writer is you get to learn about all sorts of fascinating topics.
And looking at your bio, I mean, apart from, I think we've got a mutual interest because I love bats, so therefore, and I was watching the first ones in the campo yesterday who were circling around the house. But also did it all start with a squashed frog? What's all that about?
Yes, so I only just remember this, but apparently when I was probably about 3 or 4, I was absolutely fascinated by a squashed frog in the road near my granddad's house.
Okay, strange how these things happen, isn't it? Right, so you've called it the elephant in the room. How to stop making ourselves and other animals sick. Well, we kind of know, and I'm not going to go down that particular rabbit hole today about COVID-19 and viruses sort of leaping between species. But how are we? What's the premise of the elephant in the room?
Yeah, so there are kind of actually 2 elephants in the room. The first elephant is that we're actually ignoring the fact that we're animals too. So we kind of feel that as humans, we're not really animals, we're separate. But actually our biology shows us that we are. And then the second elephant related to that is how much we're affecting animal health by what we're doing to the planet. And so that's affecting wildlife health and our health because we're animals too.
I suppose this is one of the things we tend to think that we are above the, because we're in certain circumstances we're at the top of the, whatever, not the food chain, but you know what I'm saying in terms of what we think of as the species hierarchy. But we seem to think and see ourselves as separate and unique and distinct, and it only takes something like a pandemic or something along those lines to sort of reinforce the force that we as the saying would go, we ain't that special, Liz.
Exactly, and actually, because our bodies are so similar to those of gorillas and chimps, that can actually cause those animals problems when we go to visit them as ecotourists. And actually, one very tiny good thing to come out of the COVID-19 pandemic is that now people visiting gorillas actually wear masks, so that protects the gorillas from our colds, our respiratory viruses, all sorts.
So what do we? I mean, you talk about gorillas and people wearing masks. So what were the case studies that you looked at in terms to put this book together? Then,
yes. So I went far back in time. Once I started to look for how we've been affecting wildlife health, I was really surprised by just how far back it went and how it's actually speeding up as well since the 1980s and 1990s. So I started by looking at Neanderthals and how when the first humans came out of Africa, they may have killed them off because of a disease, or many diseases, in fact. And then moved on to look at the megafauna in North America, so woolly mammoths, some of those huge animals that died out. Some of those losses may have been due to the first humans walking in with diseases. And then it goes on, the black-footed ferret in the States. In Hawaii, we took in 3, I'm going to say things, because one of them was a mosquito and 2 diseases. And that's led to absolute devastation of Hawaii's native birds.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because we tend to think of, if you think, well, the devastating impact that humans have had on wildlife and nature, we tend to think, okay, fine, the dodo, it gets hunted to extinction or it gets eaten or whatever, and it goes. But we don't really think that we can pass on diseases that they have, that the natural flora or the natural fauna has defences against.
Yes, and it's not always diseases that we've taken in our bodies. It's not always human diseases, but it's often things like we've moved animals to other places and that animal has taken a disease with it. So the fungus that harmed frogs, we think that's been spread around the world by trade, and that's put a huge number of species at risk.
Did you mention just at the beginning that mosquitoes? So we brought mosquitoes to, was it Hawaii or to so we sort of carried mosquitoes over to these islands. That's an interesting one. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, so it sounds like there were some people who were on a whaling ship, went to Mexico, refilled up their water casks, then went to Hawaii, emptied the dregs of the water casks into the streams, and there's a quote that the dregs were filled with wriggling larvae, or I think they called it wrigglers, and so those were the mosquitoes. And in the early days, people would actually gather by the river to listen to these amazing new insects sing. And it was only later people kind of linked up the bites they were getting with these new fascinating creatures.
So what? I mean, what are we trying to? Are you trying to put this up as a marker that we have to take more care? It's not a one-way street, because I mean, obviously, with the pandemic that we went through 5 years ago, everybody was saying, "Oh, well, we've got to be more careful, and we have to take these precautions." But it's not a one-way street; it's a two-way street. So we have to take more precaution, or has that is that sort of. Has that one particularly bolted and we were very much sort of shutting the gate afterwards?
It's a bit of both, really, because there's a lot we can do in terms of not only individual action, so things like reading the book, talking about it to people, cutting your consumption, using the train, not the plane, those kind of issues, but also more systemically, on a much larger scale, we need to ask our politicians to cut deforestation, stop climate change, regulate trade so that we're not spreading diseases in the pet trade and the food trade and the farming trade, change how we farm. So there's a huge amount we can do. And the good news is that not only protects wildlife health, but it protects us from pandemics as well.
Because I suppose one of the things is, I mean, with deforestation and indeed any sort of urban or any housing or expansion of urban environments that cut into natural forest land, you're doing a couple of things. A, you're depriving sort of the native flora and fauna of their habitats, you're destroying that. But also, I mean, and again on a far smaller scale. But bear with me on this one, Liz, because I have arguments about this one. All things, I'm based in southern Spain, and we have the expansion of people who are always saying, okay, that's a beautiful hill over there. I want to build a development overlooking the shimmering Mediterranean, etc. And they build these developments, and then the people who've moved into these developments complain because they're suddenly getting wild boar coming through and going into through their bins and saying this is unacceptable for us. Why do we do something about it? It's like, well, it was so they were their first kind of situation, and on the back of that, then you have these urbanizations or these developments, and then you can cause. We've had an outbreak of fires over here that may or may not be started by people obviously coming up and throwing cigarettes at them. And again, impacts on natural habitats. And so this is perhaps a scientific lesson to learn that we should, we've got to sort of stop expanding so much and have a really big rethink about what the land is for and what our habitats are for.
Yes, I agree. One of the solutions that people are proposing is to actually include ecosystem health, the impact on that in planning applications. So people wanting to build would have to say how this was going to change the ecosystem and how that would affect health. And talking about habitat, they think possibly one of the reasons that Ebola is becoming more of a problem is that the forests are being destroyed, so animals are crammed in more closely together and more likely to come into contact with the fruit bats that carry the virus naturally.
Another thing as well is if you pollute a river, for example, or you take something out of the incredibly complex ecosystems, then you're letting other species thrive who wouldn't normally thrive because of natural predators, etc. And that can also be a danger for not both the animal populations and again going back to that possible contamination.
Yes, anytime you disrupt an ecosystem, you don't really know what the consequences will be. Often when an ecosystem is disrupted, it's the bigger, more specialist animals that go extinct or whose numbers plummet. And they tend to have better immune systems. The smaller, more generalist animals like rats, they kind of have a live fast, die young approach. So they don't really put much effort into fighting off germs. They just breed fast. So, but by disruption, we're kind of encouraging that kind of animal to be around, and that's not good for us either.
I love the fact that we've got rats that have got to live fast, die young. They're sort of the James Dean of the rodent world.
Yes.
What are you hoping then that people will take from your book?
So I'm hoping that people will become aware of what they can do and get in touch with their representatives and push for pressures, because there are moves. People are working on a global pandemic agreement this week at the UN. And if there's public pressure, people show that they still are interested in protecting us against pandemics, as we all are, but that there is that mandate there from everyone, then that will help us get really strong measures in place and protect us all.
The book is called The Elephant in the Room, How to Stop Making Ourselves and Other Animals Sick. It's by Liz Kalaugher, who's we're speaking to today, and you can order the book via our own virtual bookstore. Liz, if people want to find you online and say nice things about you, where's the best place to find you?
I'm at lizkalaugher.net, which, should I spell that?
You can, yes, please.
So it's Liz, L-I-Z, and then KALAUGHER.net. So it's got Laugher in it.
Well, that's even better. So, but Liz, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you this morning. Congratulations on the book. Who'd have thought that this all started from a squash frog, eh? Liz Kalaugher, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.